Right, I'm joined now by Paul Lavers, who is actually, by the looks of things, sat back at the location where he was on Doctor Who back in the 1970s. How is it to be back there? The weather looks lovely there.
Yeah, terrific weather. I mean, we have a great day. I'm just making sure that Count Grendel of Grach doesn't come back. We didn't see him exit the moat, so we don't really know where he is at the moment.
Did you just drive there to test your eyesight by any chance?
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. I thought, I can't find a Specsavers, but I can find Leeds Castle.
Perfect. So, Doctor Who, how did you come to be involved in the story of the androids of Tara?
Amazingly, I just received a script. I'd done an episode of When the Boat Comes In for Michael Hayes, and that was terrific. That was with James Bolam, and it was a terrific episode. And I actually, my episode of When the Boat Comes In, also Paul Darrow, Avon from Lake Seven was in it. And so we had a great time because I'd worked in the theatre with Paul for a couple of years down in Bristol. So we got on well. We had a chat about this and that, and we were constantly giving each other quizzes about films, in actual fact, when we weren't actually very busy. And of course, the funny thing is that not only did I work with Paul, but I also worked with Lois Baxter in the theatre. Paul, Lois and myself, we did She Stoops to Conquer at the Little Theatre in Bristol. So it was lovely. So Michael Hayes, got on so well with Michael Hayes, and I just got a script. Would I like to do Swordsman Farah? And just looking at the script, it was just, I loved it because I loved The Prisoner of Zenda. The Prisoner of Zenda has always been one of my favourite films. First of all, I remember seeing the Ronald Colman version, which was wonderful, and then the Stuart Granger version. So it was absolutely, there's no question. I just said, yeah, I want to do it.
Oh, great. You didn't actually have to do an audition. The part was offered straight to you. So you arrived in studio for rehearsals, I assume. And in those days, actual time was given to rehearsals, wasn't it? TV production's changed a lot now.
Oh, yes. I mean, hugely. I'm also sort of heavily involved in technical side. I love the technical side of video. I edit my own video. If it's a Wednesday night and it's still lockdown, then you can join my video quiz on Facebook. Paul Lavers on Facebook, 7 o'clock every Wednesday. So I make the graphics, I do everything, shoot it, edit it. So I've always loved video and film. I started on film. I had an 8mm, not Super 8, the original 8mm movie camera with my parents. I did a lot of shooting with that, even did some animation and stuff. And then I wanted to do a ghost story at some time. I'd written a ghost story and I wanted to film it. But film was fiendishly expensive. So we had U-matic 3/4-inch low band videotape to back up. And then when everything was going fine with the takes, then we'd switch over to 16mm. But I actually found I like the feel of video more. And one of the things that was different in those days was that all location stuff was done on 16mm film, and obviously the studio was done on video. So you see that there's a bit of a jump. I know some people say, oh, you can't even see it, but you can see the difference in quality between the 25 frame per second, the 24 frame per second going to the 25. And it's just, there's a totally different feel about the whole movement. Movement is totally different on video than it is on film, because you've got 25 frames on the film, you've got 50 frames really fields on television, on video. So it's like they don't join up too well. I've gone on and on, but then you get my meaning. It was just a very strange thing. You go and do the filming, and then you go back to the studio, and it's a totally different feel. It's also very much a difference to the actual camaraderie of being there. And when you're filming on location, even if it's only just down the road in Kent for Leeds Castle, you're all in it together. So it's like a traveling group of players. You have a laugh, you have a chat, you endless stories, and you feel like a team. When you go back up to town, up to London, and rehearse the studio stuff, well, 5, 6 o'clock, everybody just goes, oh, see you tomorrow, woomph, and they're off. And so you don't get that feeling of the company knitting together as well as you do on film when you're on location.
And talking about the company, how did you get on with the show's leading man? How did you find Tom Baker?
Very interesting. I went to one of these events the other day, and someone, I will remain nameless, couldn't stand Tom. I loved him. He was very good to me. He looked after me a bit because I was going through separation with my first wife and through into divorce, and it was like I was feeling very sorry for myself at the time, wondering about what happened to my 2 boys and everything. And he just sort of looked after me. And even when we were in London, having sort of going against what I've just been saying, even when we were in London, he used to take me out. He took me to a couple of clubs. He introduced me to Douglas Adams, in actual fact, one of those. And he said, this man's a genius. He's absolute genius. And of course he was, sadly, not long for the world, but he was a genius, Douglas Adams. But it was that sort of thing. He looked after me. And so that I loved him. I loved working with him. He had great integrity when working with or around children. He wanted to make sure that he maintained that Doctor Who image. He smoked like a chimney, but he would never smoke on location in case children saw him. And he maintained that. So I loved it. I loved working with him. But he's different. He's a powerful person. So he's quite sort of in your face. And I can understand how some people don't react as well to him.
It's interesting, you mentioned his commitment to the children who'll be watching the show. After your episodes were broadcast, did you notice the reaction of children that you met as you were going about your daily routines?
Well, the moment when they were transmitted, I was actually in Vienna. I was doing The Importance of Being Earnest. And in fact, it's very interesting. Whilst I was making The Androids of Tara, I was offered 2 things. I was offered to play Algernon in The Importance of Being Earnest in Vienna, or I was sort of offered a ghost story. I'd done a Christmas ghost story a couple of years before for the BBC and M.R. James. And I was they were talking to me about another one. And I was thinking, well, what do I do? If I do the ghost story, it's a week maximum. But if I do Vienna, it's about 3 months, and I'm away from the country. And it was everybody, Cyril Schatz, who played the Archimandrite, saying, oh, Paul, you have to go to Vienna. It is wonderful. It is so beautiful. You will love it. And Tom would say, yes, you've got to see Vienna. Well, you've got to go. And so I did go. I did go to Vienna. But yes, so I was over there when they were transmitted, when the episodes were transmitted. So the sad thing was my 2 boys were watching over here, and they saw in episode 2 where we take the drink and I collapse, and we all collapse, and they were a bit upset that I collapsed. So I rang them up afterwards and said, no, I'm all right. Daddy's okay. And the ironic thing as well is when I was over in Vienna, who should be filming just outside of Vienna but Peter Sellers and his wife, Lynn Frederick. They were filming The Prisoner of Zenda.
Ah, perfect.
So it's like, wow, unbelievable. So, yeah, children, I think, I don't think I had any problems with children looking at me going, oh, it's a man who cut Doctor Who's staff off.
Yes, of course, you damaged the iconic scarf.
Yes.
So we've talked about Tom Baker. How did you find Mary Tam to work with on the production?
Oh, what? Obviously, she is an amazing beauty, and I don't mean that in any way, she was a beautiful woman. She just had grace, poise, looks, a lot, but she was also incredibly, fiercely intelligent. And she would be doing the Times crossword, and I'm sort of, just about doing the Beano crossword. And she was fiendishly intelligent, very charming, very very nice to work with, and a lovely person. I luckily, I don't mean this that came out wrongly, but I just did something with her about 6 months before she died, and we met, and she said, "Oh, hello, Paul." And I never expected any of them, of the stars, as it were, to ever remember who you are, because they have to do. They're working with hundreds of people, episodes and everything. And she was just so lovely. She just, "Oh, hello, Paul. How are you?" I just thought, "Oh, Mary, thank you so much for even remembering who I was." She was just, it was lovely, and she still looked amazing.
Now, one of your other guest actors was Peter Jeffries. Had you worked with him before?
No, but what a treat. What a treat. There's a man with fabulous stories. He had wonderful stories, and he was so full of bravura. I just seen him just before I did Doctor Who. I'd seen him in the film Midnight Express, where he played a very sort of strange character, sort of a bit of a medicine man. And it was amazing just to see him. He said, yes, well, we did it on. I said, "Oh, did you get to see Turkey or anything like that?" "No," he said, "we did the studio in Shepperton." But he again was a lovely man. I bumped into him a number of times when we were filming, again in London, just in a pub or whatever. He was so a real actor, do you know what I mean? He had so many stories, so many, and it was a joy to be with him. Funnily enough, I've been working with his daughter, Victoria Jeffries, over the past couple of years doing medical role play, which is great fun. And we just have a chat, and she has memories about him, and it's lovely.
You just mentioned that you were asking whether he got to see much of Turkey while filming over there. I was sort of throw that question back at you. When you were in Austria, did you get much chance to see the country?
Not as much as I would have liked, but certainly we did get out and about. The great thing about the theatre in Austria at that time, it's a Vienna English-speaking theatre over there, which is wonderful. And they had so many wonderful sponsors that we would get to spend a weekend in a castle looking not unlike that. And we were being entertained by the Count of this and the Count of that and the Viscount here. And it was amazing. And I think Bill Bryson says that if aliens ever landed and they landed in Vienna, they'd assume that it was a capital of the world, because there are so many amazing buildings. And The Third Man was always one of my favourite films, and to just go to the city where it was filmed was truly magnificent. I remember the first time I was let off rehearsal, I could wander around and I saw, the Cafe Mozart. That's where Orson Welles sat down with, I must sit down there. I had a cup of coffee there, Wiener Schnitzel, whatever, and then go off, walk a few hundred yards down the road and then say, Cafe Mozart. You think, there's another Cafe Mozart. There were sort of hundreds of Cafe Mozarts all over the place. No, loved Austria. It was lovely.
How funny you should just mention Bill Bryson, one of my favourite writers. I'm sat in my study, and I'm currently reading this.
Oh yes,
I've got his latest book. That's what I've been reading outside.
Yeah, that is on a list that I was going to get, but now we're sort of holed up. It's like that'll have to wait until lockdown's over.
So you've returned to acting now, but you took a break and were a presenter for considerable time, doing the late night continuity. Yeah,
that was really. I got to the stage where eventually the good side of the story about having been sort of separated from my first wife. After I came back from Vienna, I met my wife Now, Erin Geraghty, we were doing a TV film with Kenneth Moore and his wife Angela Douglas, and it was Angela Douglas who said, "You ought to go out with Paul." And she said, "Oh no, he's just getting over a divorce." I said, "No, why don't you?" And we did, and we got together, and the two boys came to live with us, and then we had we were sort of diagnosed, if that's the right word, as we were going to have triplet daughters. So we had triplet daughters, so that's 5 children, and it was time to do something that brought in just a little bit more money than the jobbing actor that I was. So I became a TV presenter, which was fabulous. I love TV presenting, I still do. I love presenting on television, and it was something that I could do that would bring in a heck of a lot more money than acting, and yet it would still be exercising all the muscles that you had to use as an actor. So funnily enough, I've done 2 productions at the National now, the National Theatre. And the first one was in Les Blancs, and the second one was in Network, where I played, I was on screen at the National as an American TV journalist. And whilst I was doing the audition for that, I said, and they said, "Oh, how have you managed to sound so much like a TV presenter?" And I said, "Well, actually, I was one for quite some time." I said, "But I don't normally mention it in auditions because it might go against me." And they said, "Oh, no, always mention it, always mention it. It's a fascinating skill to have, and it will, be good for your career." So since then, I mention it all the time.
Well, one last question, and we'll return to Doctor Who. Basically, what would you say your highlight of being on that show was?
Oh. There were some, I suppose there were little moments that Michael Hayes and Tom Baker allowed me to have. Just little looks, or just when the doctor had said, "Yes, I can't stand, robot," and I just would go, just a little look at the end of a scene, which normally as a sort of visiting actor, you don't get a chance to sort of develop any real character on screen. And they just gave me time to do little things like that. And I love them for it. It was such a tremendous sort of release to be able to do what I wanted. Only tiny little bits, but they really made me feel a part of the whole production.
Well, thank you very much for giving us some of your time to talk about your memories of being on the show. If I were you, I would go for a swim in that lovely moat behind you.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. When we were testing it earlier, it's not as good as it looks, I'm afraid, John. Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to remember everything about Doctor Who.
Well, take care. Thank you so much.
Thank you, John.